Director Mercy, if you could please lead us in our pledge.
Certainly. Please join me in pledge formation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God.
Thank you much. Madam Secretary, it's nice to have you back.
Thank you.
Anyway, hope you had a nice trip and got to see some beautiful country about. Okay.
Thank you.
If we could have a roll call.
Thank you, Mr. President. Division 7, Gary Van Dam.
Here.
Division 6, Audrey Miller. Here. Division 5, Robert Paris.
Here.
Division 2, Keith Dias.
Here.
Division 1, Drew Mercy.
Here.
Division 3, Frank Donato.
Here.
Division 4, George Lane.
Here.
Assistant General Manager Thompson.
Here.
General Counsel Kim.
Here.
And Holly Hughes, President.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move on to our voluntary public roll call. So those who are listening in and are unable to make the meeting, we're always happy to hear who is with us right there.
Good evening. White Fence 3, Jack Cephas.
Hey, Jack. Welcome as usual. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any others? Okay, moving on to item number 5, public comments. If anybody would wish to address the board, if that item is not on the agenda later on, now's the time to do so. I think this meeting's going to be fast. Move to item number 6, adoption of agenda, 6A1. We have a motion and second.
Mr. President, I'll move to adopt the agenda.
We have a motion by Director Miller.
I'll second.
We have a second by Director Mercy. If there's no further discussion or questions, Madam Secretary.
Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Robert Paris.
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes.
Drew Mercy.
Yes.
Frank Donato.
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. And that'll bring us to item number 7, consent calendar. We have several items on that. It appears they can be done in one board order, but most of those that we're used to, there's annexations that we really can't really do anything about. But they're here to look at. If there's any questions, we can ask staff, or otherwise the motion would be in order.
Mr. President, I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion or questions, Madam Secretary.
Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Audrey Miller. Robert Paris.
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes.
Drew Mercy.
Yes.
Frank Donato.
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, motion carried. That'll bring us to item number 8, the Finance Committee, and Director Donato is chairman of that committee, and we'll turn it over to Director Donato.
Okay, thanks, Mr. President. Our market update and investment review, information only. Richard Abbey from PFM is asset manager, who we have an account and investments with their firm. He's going to give us an overview of what's going on.
Thank you very much. Sorry for the barking in the background. Just to give you sort of the key things is that your portfolio is safe, liquid, performing well. We've seen an increase in market volatility following the July employment situation report. While that's died down somewhat, there's still a higher degree of uncertainty. Next slide. Next slide. So what we see on this chart is the GDP report. And what we saw is that it slowed down in the first quarter to 1.4, but rebounded in the second quarter to 2.8%. But there's real questions now is, are we ending the near of this expansion? Or are we approaching recessions? So even though the current numbers look good, 2.8, the Atlanta Fed's current estimate is 2.9 for the third quarter, that we're seeing weaknesses, that unemployment's trending up, as we'll talk about, consumer delinquencies are up, personal savings rates are down, existing home sales are at their lowest level in a couple of years. So we're seeing some concerns there that we may be at the end of this expansion. Next slide. Inflation has been, the latest number was for only 114,000 jobs in July, down significantly from expectations of 175, 180,000 jobs. And the unemployment rate ticked up to 4.3 versus 4.1 previously. So there are a lot of concerns that maybe the Fed's waited too long and that interest rates have been held too high and that we're focusing on employment crashing. On the jobless claims on the right, what you can see is that its level has continued to trend up. Maybe not as high as it was in July of 2023, July, August, but still at a worrisome level that the trend is not favorable. So certain market participants expect that the Fed has waited too long and that they'll have to act aggressively at their next meeting in September. I think most of the market participants have moved away from their calls for the Fed to have an emergency meeting, but currently the market's building in about a 1% cut in interest rates this year with probably 50 basis points in September. If we go to the next slide, this is showing you what the Fed's expectations were that were based on what they thought should happen with the economy and interest rates. So the change in real GDP in their last number in June was expecting 2.1% for the year. Like I said, it's been higher than that so far. They were expecting, upper right, the unemployment rate to end the year at 4%, currently 4.3%, even though they're looking for it to raise next year. So it's a little higher than the Fed was expecting. And that inflation at 2.6 number, again, this is PCE inflation at 2.6, we're about there. So a slightly hotter economy, maybe a little more unemployment and inflation under control, the market was saying, well, the Fed was not being aggressive enough on its rate hike. So in its June meeting, it was suggesting only one rate cut this year of 25 basis points. As I mentioned before, the market is building in rate cuts of about 100 basis points or 1% this year. So a much more aggressive Fed. So it will be interesting to see the CPI report tomorrow and what happens. If we go to the next slide, so this was showing interest rates as they looked at June 30th. And what we saw is that the 2-year was at about 4.75, the 3-month was at 5.35. That was sort of on that steady, we think the Fed's going to act gradually, cut rates, things are going to remain in control. But since then, that jobs report spooked the market, and we've seen interest rates fall significantly in their lowest levels to 12 months. While they've rebounded a little bit, they're still down significantly. So that 3-month, which was at 5.35, is now at about 5.17. The 2-year is down to about 3.99, 4%, depending on when you're looking at it. So rates have fallen about 75 basis points. They still remain well above where they were for most of the past 10 years, but we are looking, as if the information and economic data develops as expected, at a much different situation than we were 6 months ago, with lower rates and potentially lower rates in a year. If we go to the next slide. So this is just showing you what the market was expecting as far as the number of rate cuts this year. And when we talk about a cut, the cut is anticipated to be 25 basis points. So 5 cuts, which was shown in the far right, means 5 times 25, not five meeting cuts, because we only have 3 meetings this year left. What's been interesting is this was just sort of post-employment report where the market was very panicked about things. It's come down, so again, the market's expecting about 4 cuts this year, down from 5. So again, still expecting cuts. Depends on how the data develops, but still definitely a lower interest rate environment than we were looking at. And if we go to the next slide, this brings you up interest rates just to show you how things transition with that Fed meeting. So the orange line is the 3-month Treasury. It doesn't move as fast because it's looking to what the Fed's going to do right away. The 2-year is more of a forward look forward because it embodies what the market thinks the Fed's going to do over the next couple of years. And you can see where it dropped suddenly at the far right. That was because the market was expecting the Fed to act even more aggressively, that 5+ hikes. Again, we're looking at a 2-year, the bottom color of about 3.99, 4%, depending on when you're looking at it, and a 3-month at about 5.17. So definitely lower rates. That 3-month rate will continue to go down if the Fed actually cuts interest rates. Next slide. I won't cover this since it's in the package, but these are just sort of our views about the impacts of different aspects of the economy and how they will impact the investment environment. Generally, we view the favorable aspects to it as not a significant recession or maybe hopefully just a soft landing. That's sort of our base case. Again, there is concerns about that, and there could be concerns about geopolitical events such as Israel and Iran, the war in Ukraine that could drive things different than from a baseline economic process. And that concludes the economic presentation. Or do any questions now, or should I continue to the portfolio?
Any questions? Now's the time. Richard, you always do a great job, and it's not always been the case with representatives we've had, but you're very easy to get to follow, and we have a lot of confidence in you. So if there's no other questions, we thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna, Dr. Donato, we're gonna move right
Okay. Okay, now let's go ahead and move on to, where am I at here? 882, consideration of possible action to accept and file the check registry list for the period of July 11th through the 1st, August 1st. And General Manager Newton is going to give us an update on that.
All right. Pinch hitting for General Manager Newton is.
So Pete.
Okay, Peter, you take it.
I'll take it from here. So the Finance Committee met. They reviewed the check register list. There were a few items of note. One was a reduction in the variable charge that we received from DWR, and that was due to a past credit that we were able to apply this month. Also, there was, of note, there was more external lab fees, but that had to do with the timing of regulatory samples, and that was reviewed with the committee. And there was also a question about a survey software, and Justin reviewed that and the purpose of having that survey software and how it helps us out in the field. So those are the three items that stood out to the committee during the Finance Committee. We're happy to answer any other questions you might have on the check register list.
But the Finance Committee did review them, and we recommended them.
Yes.
Yes, we did. Okay, so I'll move on board order 882 to accept the check registry.
Okay, we've got a motion by Director Donato. We have a second by
Director Miller,
Director
second.
Miller.
Okay.
If there's no further questions or comments, Madam Secretary?
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, yeah. Motion carried. Yeah, thank you, Director Donato. Oh, we still,
Okay, that,
we still have one
yeah,
more.
so bring us to, yeah, A3, that's consider possible action on approving a purchase order with International Water Screens to repair the East Moss screens at the Quartz Hill Water Treatment Plant, not to exceed the amount of roughly $32,000. And our GM, Bozigan's going to get, our operations manager, Bozigan's going to give us an update on that.
Thank you, Director Donato. Good evening. So as Frank said, we had to have one of our moss screens repaired. We have 14 moss screens at the agency at all our different facilities. At the Quartz Hill plant, we have one on the aqueduct and two within the plant. The east screen within the plant, something got caught in it, it bound up, and it caused quite a bit of damage. So we have some slides. Thank you, Holly. Pretty exciting slides here. These screens are about 30 feet long. So we had to have a crane come out, lift the screen out. Next slide, Holly. And you can see, kind of get a view of how tall that thing is. And then the last slide is just them getting ready to set it on the trailer. So International Water Screens is one of two traveling screen manufacturers in the state of California. Farm Pump used to do our screens. They got out of the screen business. International Water Screens really cornered the market. They've done a good job for us, repairing, fabricating, etc. So we hired them to come out, pull the screen, take it to their shop in Bakersfield, make the repairs, bring it back, and they did it all within about I think about a 4-day period. So it worked out pretty well. Occasionally, we will have a company turnkey, which means we have them do the repairs, they hire the crane, they do the hauling, they do everything, but then we still kind of want to check and make sure we're getting the best price. So we did check with another crane service on what they would charge to pull the screen and haul it, and their price was $5,200. Bragg Crane Service, which is pretty big. They were $5,200 each way, and IWS charged, I think it was $3,700 each way. So we got a pretty good price on the crane service, but we do continue to do some comparisons, make sure we're getting the best price. So with that being said, as Frank said, the cost was $31,778.54 for everything, and we hope we get a lot of service out of the screen now that it's been repaired.
Okay, is there any further questions?
Yeah, I have one question. How long does a screen usually last?
Well, it just depends. I mean, we do maintenance on them every year. We try to every 2 years, have them pulled, inspected. There's, the screen is really underwater for the most part. 75% of it is below water. So you have to pull out to inspect it. So if nothing gets caught in it, you're just doing routine maintenance, some bearing repair, replacement, and so forth. I mean, you might get 5 or 6 years before you have to do anything major. Old days, they had clutches that would just start slipping. Well, now they have shock relays, which if it gets bound up, it's going to draw more amperage than it should, and it should kick out. And I think that they had, since we had a lot of heavy moss recently, they had the shock relay set to where it wouldn't keep kicking out. Probably had them set a little too far. And so our safety feature was kind of mitigated there. So anyway, that's what caused it, Gary.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Mark, do we ever get any fish stuck in the screen?
The fish usually don't get stuck in the screen. They end up in the plant a lot of the times when we drain a clarifier. Usually we're taking buckets of fish and putting them back in the aqueduct. So typically they do not get caught in the screen. They do swim around it, but they don't get stuck in there.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to move on. Board Order A3. I'm sorry.
Just to, okay, just go ahead. Go ahead. Let me try to get that straight, Mr. Item.
Okay, I was going to make a motion to approve the $31,778.54.
For 8A3, is that correct?
Yes, $31,778.54.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, is there any further questions or comments on this item?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Donato, a second by Director Miller. There's no further questions or comments, Madam Secretary?
Gary Bam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Harris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Thank you. Motion carried.
That concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you much, Sarah. Okay, we're going to move on to the next, Rob, excuse me, gets this. Yeah, Rob, the next report is yours, I believe.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and I'll have Peter do the report on this.
Okay.
Thank you, Director Harris. So tonight, in front of you for your consideration is approval of a resolution that approves the Navy State Water Contractors USGS groundwater monitoring program.
I can hardly hear Peter. Can somebody tell him to speak up on the mic?
Sorry, my mic was off. There we go. I'm on now.
Oh, well, that's good. I thought maybe I was losing my hearing. Okay, thanks.
All right, so just a reboot there. So for your consideration tonight is the approval of the AV State Water Contractors Association USGS Groundwater Monitoring Program budget. So annually, this budget comes in front of the board. Just as a refresher, the AV State Water Contractors Association covers 50% of this program's cost, and 25% of it is through the Irwin Group, and the final 25% is covered by AV Water Master. So this 50%, it totals $38,465. And our portion of that as part of the association is 85.7%, or a total of $32,965. So if approved by the board tonight, then the AV State Water Contractors will invoice AVEC for their support of the USGS program through the association. And happy to answer any questions you might have on the program or our commitment this year.
Is there any questions from Assistant Manager? Yeah. And, one question. We're paying 87%?
85.7%.
And that's what we've done for years, is that correct?
That's correct.
That's based upon entitlement.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Mr. President, this is Rob. I move approval of Board Order 8B1.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Paris. You have a second.
I'll second.
Second by Director Mercy. There's no further, questions on this, Madam Secretary?
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller, Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, motion carried. That'll bring us down to 8B2.
Mr. President, this is Rob. Peter will take this item too. Go ahead, Peter.
All right. Thank you, Director Paris. So we felt like it would be valuable to bring in front of you a couple of brief presentations on what the AV State Water Contractors Association is doing on two projects, the Little Rock Creek Groundwater Project and also a project called Culverts Project. Both of those would expand the ability to recharge water in the Antelope Valley, and they've been moving forward. So tonight we're going to have Tom present on the Little Rock Project and Pam present on the Culverts Project. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tom.
Welcome, Tom. We don't see you that often here.
Yeah, we don't. Good to see you all. This mic is working. So, good. Yes, I just wanted to give you a brief presentation on, as Peter mentioned, one of the projects for the AV State Water Contractors Association. A little bit of background on the Little Rock Creek Recharge Project. As you probably know, this is a joint project between the AV State Water Contractor member units, AVEC, Palm Water District, and Little Rock Creek Irrigation District. The current project capacity is estimated at 15,000 acre-feet per year. It does utilize existing facilities, which is a huge advantage, especially when we go to move forward on a more permanent project. So it is a 20 CFS state water project turnout that exists, that is owned and operated by Little Rock Creek Irrigation District. And they have also an existing recharge basin, and then also any other facilities that are needed to allow the water to be moved into the creek. There's no construction or modification required, which is also very helpful for this project, and it has a minimum flow compared to what is natural flow in the creek itself. So it's 20 CFS compared to 700 CFS that we expect to see, when we have high flows like we did in 2023. So very minimal flow, so it just adds to that natural flow. Successful this last year, we had a very successful year. Almost 10,000 acre-feet were recharged at Little Rock Creek. And so that was a very good year for us. And as a result of that, an updated memorandum of understanding was presented to the board of all the agencies, and it was approved earlier this year in March. Thank you. As far as the next steps in the project, that relates to the completion of the CEQA work. And so the environmental compliance is the next opportunity for us to move forward with the project. What we did is at the last, actually in the June meeting of the state water contractors, they approved Helix Environmental to be that consultant that's going to work with the association to complete the CEQA work for the project. The CEQA initial study is going to be done first, and that will help to determine what the project's potential impacts are in the region. The results of that initial study will then inform us what level of compliance, for example, can we simply do a categorical exemption, or can we, will we have to do a mitigated negative deck, things like that. So that will tell us that. That draft initial study, that first step, will be presented to us. We're expecting that to come back to the staff for review by the end of or early September. So that's where we're at with the project.
Tom, is there any questions? I had a couple of questions. I mean,
Yeah.
That's natural, flow. It's going to happen one way or another. So I'm just not sure what's going to be done to change it to greater benefit. I mean, we're not building any dams or spreading basins, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
So is it not? How's it going to benefit above and beyond what's happening right now?
Yeah. The water that is recharged, for example, in 2023, the 10,000 acre feet that we recharge will be accounted to the partners as banked water that can be then later recovered as imported water.
Wouldn't you think? It seemed to me like it would be natural recharge, but it's not.
Yeah, this is actually artificial. Now, this would be in addition to the if there is any natural. There may not be natural recharge when we do our recharge, but this is artificial recharge. We're actually adding.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to clarify that, you're taking water from the Avek and putting it into Little Rock Creek so it can naturally seep into.
Yeah.
I missed that already.
Yeah, some of you might remember way back when we did a study on all of the creeks in the Antelope Valley. It's called the Stetson Report, and you might have heard of it. And Little Rock Creek obviously was one of the ones that we looked at because it's a natural waterway here, and it did really well.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I have one question. Are they still doing the sediment removal there in Little Rock, or?
At the dam?
Yeah.
Let's see. I know they got approval for funds. You might know, Peter.
Battling with technology.
Yeah.
Yes, they're still, Palmdale Water District is still actively looking for opportunities to remove sediment. The water level at Little Rock Dam has to go down enough for that to happen, though. So in the recent wet years, they haven't had the opportunities. But as soon as it dries out, they'll be removing sediment. But that's much upstream of the recharge project that Tom is talking about.
Good project.
Thank you very much.
All right, so the next one is the Culverts project, and Pam's been doing some work coordinating with LA County on this project. So turn it over to Pam.
Welcome, Pam.
Thanks, Pete. Good evening, directors. So I'll provide a little update and also just some background on the Culverts project. So AV State Water Contractors has been collaborating with LA County Waterworks staff and their consultants to identify potential grant funding opportunities for proposed flood control culverts that will enable improved recharge at Big Rock, Little Rock, and Upper Amargosa Creeks. The culverts are being proposed to reduce flooding at some of the cross streets for each of these creeks. For Upper Amargosa Creek, the culverts would be required along Avenue N in Palmdale, and that's in the lower Amargosa Creek area. For Little Rock Creek, the culverts would be required along East Palmdale Boulevard in Little Rock. And then for Big Rock Creek, the culverts would be at Avenue T and Avenue S in Pear Blossom. Next slide, please. But here's a map that kind of shows an overview of where each of those culverts would be located. The red star indicates the 3 different culvert projects. And in the next slide, we have a little bit closer detail. You can see where the actual crossings are. The red line represents the culverts, and then the black dotted line is where the creek runs. So you can see, I can't see that good from here, but you can see where it crosses for each of the projects. Okay, moving on. So we've identified 2 different potential grant programs. The Bureau of Reclamation's Water Smart Drought Resiliency Program would be the first program. That focuses on projects related to storing water or recharging groundwater supplies, storage of supplies that can be made available during drought. So this project would be a good fit for that program. We can have a maximum project cost of up to $10 million with up to a 50% cost share. We might be eligible for a cost share waiver depending on where different disadvantaged communities lie within the benefit area. And there was a notice of funding opportunity that was published on July 24th, and applications are due for that program by October 7th. So it's something we'd want to move fairly quickly on. We've also been looking at the small storage program under the Water Smart program. And this project may also be a good fit for that. It focuses on water storage capacity that increases surface water or groundwater storage. This project has a little bit larger maximum cost, up to $30 million, with a little lower cost share at 25%. And then applications for that second round of funding for that program are due on April 30th of next year. So there's a little time to continue looking into that program. And we've also just looked at the stormwater grant program through the State Water Resources Control Board. That program has offered grants in the past that fit this project well, but there's no current funding opportunities. So we're going to continue to monitor for any new opportunities that might come up. Next slide, please. So our next steps are just to continue project development discussions with the county. AV State Water Contractor staff is going to participate in a webinar on August 15th for the Water Smart Drought Response Program, just to learn more and kind of make sure we're on par with the requirements. And then determine, as I mentioned, if the projects may qualify for disadvantaged community cost share waivers to reduce our costs if we do in fact apply for and receive funding. And then there may be future consideration from the boards for grant application submissions. We'll keep you posted on how that's moving forward. And then we'll continue to monitor on that future stormwater grant funding, like I mentioned. Any questions?
Okay, there's no further questions. We thank you much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That'll bring us down to the next item, Water Master Committee, Rob Harris. Yeah, Rob.
Yes, Mr. President, we're looking to appoint a second alternate to the Water Master Board. So far, we've had no problems. I'm the director that has been appointed to the board, and then Matt is the alternate. We're looking at the trial that's coming up, and both of us may be potentially busy at that trial at the same time. So in an abundance of caution, we wanted to come to this meeting and choose a second alternate. And Peter, did you want to take over from here?
Let me just comment from here, Rob. But in one item, that's very remote. We're going to need the second alternate, but we may with the trial, coming up. But right. One of the directors probably has the least committees of any of them is Drew Mercy. So I would like to see the board concur on Drew's appointment to that second alternate.
Mr. President, I think Drew would be an excellent appointment to that. As you know, he also chairs the, it's called by a different name, but it's a group that we have meet every month after the water master meeting. So that would actually be very convenient. And I think Drew had to recuse himself from anything to do with this trial issue. So that would be an excellent choice. And
Is that a motion coming?
I would be very happy to make a motion that Drew be named as the second alternate to the Water Master Board.
I'll second the motion. This is Keith.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. If there's no further any questions or comments, Madam Secretary.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think that's the end of my
So in the July state water contractor meetings, some of the highlights were we met directly with the director of DWR, Carla Nemeth. The focus of that meeting was their meetings with the Bureau of Reclamation. So there's been some struggles in the past in getting them to pay their fair share on time for our shared facilities and shared maintenance. All right, my understanding coming from that meeting is that Carla met with several of the leads and heads in the Bureau, and they've committed to catch back up on their costs, which is close to $50 million, and to be more responsive to their invoices from DWR. So it's a good news for us because that means that DWR doesn't have to front those costs in the future. So there's good news coming out from the director. We also had some other good news. There was a friendly dispute with Sites between the State Water Project and Sites Reservoir over water rights. We wanted to make sure that within their petition to divert water in the Delta that they noticed and specified that the State Water Project has higher rights than Sites Reservoir. So we didn't want anyone that's participating in Sites to be under the assumption that they could take water that the State Water Project would otherwise have rights to. They finally were willing to put in that language that we requested, so that was a good resolution to that friendly protest. Then we also had good news that...
I have a question.
Yes.
Did they ever say, is it going to be in this century when they actually fill that reservoir and it's going to be releasing water, or in the next century?
So far, my understanding is it's on target for this century, but...
Okay, I just want to know, the hundreds of millions of dollars that's spent on this thing is amazing. I just feel sorry for the taxpayers, I really do.
Definitely.
All right.
Thank you.
And then, yeah, no problem. And next week, we got a report from our legislative advocate with the state. We had a successful intervention on several pieces of legislation. They were well-meaning pieces of legislation that wanted to make it easier to recharge excess floodwaters, but those pieces of legislation didn't protect the State Water Project's right to excess flows in the Delta. We interceded on several of those and got language in there to protect the State Water Project. So that was good news coming out of that. In the board meeting, the big action that was taken was the selection of a federal lobbyist to represent state water contractors. That was Massey Partners. And the focus that the state water contractors has for Massey Partners is one, representing us to get potential federal dollars to help with subsidence, to help control costs, so that, because the subsidence really is not the fault of the State Water Project, it's other parties. We don't want that burden to fall on our ratepayers. So they're going to have them pursuing that, and also helping with voluntary agreements, because that's a federal and state issue, and we need some federal representation in DC to help with that. So that's the focus there. Next slide, Holly. It was also brought up that it would be good to talk about what are some other side conversations we have while I'm up in Sacramento. And a couple of those, we have, I wanted to make sure that once we selected a lobbyist, that we also put parameters on what success looks like, so that it's not just a rubber stamp consultant contract every year. We need to define what success looks like and hold them accountable to that. Also, I was approached by several state water contractors and DWR asking, where does Avek sit with Delta Conveyance Project? So I made it very clear that one of the chief struggle for Avek is the affordability of the project, and that Avek is actively looking at its needs into the future and whether the project fits into it or not. So that was those conversations with DWR and other state water project contractors. Also had some conversations with DWR regarding just making sure that there's some understanding that we intend to do groundwater banking in the Antelope Valley, and we're not looking for DWR to come in and put banks of their own out here. There is some external pressure from other state water project contractors to have DWR put banking in this basin and in the Mojave Basin.
Understood.
So just a little pushback there. Then also did readdress with DWR the need to have written assurance for reimbursement on pre-construction costs for Delta Conveyance Project. They were agreeable to that, and I've been shown a draft of that memo, so I do know they're working on it. So that's a good thing at this point. Emphasize with them the need for state water project affordability to keep that rate down as we move into the future. And then they appointed a new deputy director of state water project, John Yarborough, and I invited him to come out at his earliest opportunity and tour Avek facilities. So that's a rundown of the July efforts with the state water project. And I think that concludes that portion of the report. The only other thing I have to bring up is upcoming events. So we have a Water Master board meeting on August 28th. And just a reminder that we have an agency holiday, Labor Day, on September 2nd. And that concludes my report, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
Yes, this is Keith. St. Pete, can you tell us which state water contractors were putting pressure on DWR to have replenish banking operations in the Antelope Valley?
Oh, what I'll say is it's a lot of the East Branch contractors, because they all struggle with having a place to put water, because there's that bottleneck at Pear Blossom pumping plant. So many of them can get it into the Antelope Valley, but can't get it through the Pear Blossom pumping plant. So several of those contractors have mentioned in meetings with DWR that they need to not just look at surface storage, but look at the other aquifers along the way to potentially do a project. Is that satisfactory, Keith, that I could say it's just East Branch contractors for now?
Yeah, that's good enough. But I'd also like to mention that those same East Branch contractors are candidates for partnerships with Avek, I would think.
Yes, I totally agree. And I think that I know that Avek might be interested in the future in expanding banking operations. And I just want to make sure that we have the space to do that ourselves rather than DWR kind of push a project.
Yes, thank you for looking out for our interests.
Yeah, I would like to make comments, Director Donato. You know, our project is on the upswing, and it's going in a very positive direction. But Peter, you should have said, I would have responded to them. Oh, really? Well, why don't you talk to everybody who's in semi-tropic, who has to use the East Branch to get their water down? Yeah, that's the problem. They have a 2 million acre feet of water. They can't even get out of there half the time. So the problem is the East Branch as a whole whether it's AVAX water, high desert water bank, or semi-tropic, it's a problem. People can't put water in either one of them, and when they want the demands for their areas, they can't get it. And they're worried about site reservoir, and they're worried about a twin tunnel. Why don't you widen the goddamn pumping plant down there in Pear Blossom so we can get the water through?
That's a good point.
I just want to bring it up. Thank you.
Okay, is there anything your further?
That concludes my report.
Just one item, it was in the paper recently that there was an issue to the California, or a bond issue or a tax, potential tax increase in Cal City. And I guess it failed, is it overwhelmingly? And that was to increase taxes for, fire and police. And so this Delta conveyance, if it came before the taxpayers, I mean, by chances are it would fail, greatly. And I don't know if we're legally required to do it, but if not legally, we should certainly do it morally. But the chances of it passing in the Antelope Valley are slim to none.
George, great point. It's a great point because Antelope Valley cannot handle any more taxes.
No, exactly.
They cannot handle any more taxes. We have the largest contiguous area in the state of California of 29 contractors. We have 2,300 square miles contiguous. Now, I know other people are bigger to sell more water, but they're not contiguous in the amount of acreage that we have. So who the hell is going to pay for it? We can't help they brought in 5 million illegals through the border, and they can't, and Newsom's out there picking up trash. I mean, that is disgusting. Anyway, the East Branch needs to be widened more than anything else in the state of California, and we'll let the water flow. That's what needs to be done, and that would help everything. That's one. And number two, we need to put water in Big Rock Creek and use that as another groundwater recharge area as soon as possible.
Yeah, we could do that at very little cost.
Yeah, exactly. It's incredible. Yeah, but we don't need more taxes in the Antelope Valley. Absolutely not.
100%. Okay, we're going to move on unless there's anything further. Director's reports, the attorney's reports.
Nothing to report presently.
Request for future agenda items. We do have a need to go into closed session. There's three items. One's regarding CV communities. A and B is at Eastside Water Bank. There's a potential property being sold, and we'd like to put that down to the last item number C. Then we have another one. It's labeled property labeled. It's in 60th Street East and in when I think it's, I'm not sure when cross street, but it's 47205 60th Street East, but it's at Rancho Sierra Golf Course. And so those are the three items we need to do in closed session. So if we could have a motion, we'd appreciate that.
Mr. President, I'll go into closed session.
We have a motion by Director Miller.
I'll second.
We have a second by Director Mercy. Madam Secretary.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Harris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. We'll take a 5-minute recess and reconvene.